So in my last Terraform video, there seemed to be a little bit of interest in like continuing on the whole like AWS/Terraform infrastructure as code path. So I figured let's just make a couple more videos and see how it does. So we're going to try to deploy a static file to an S3 bucket and put CloudFront in front of the S3 bucket as an origin. So first thing we're going to do, I'm just going to make an infra folder. And then I already have Terraform installed on my computer, and I also have IAM, like a key set up on my computer as well, so I can actually run AWS commands. So inside the infra folder, I'm going to add something called main.tf. The naming doesn't really matter, I'm just calling it main. And I am going to use AI to generate a lot of the stuff just to save time. So we're going to go ahead and also make a source directory. Actually, I'll call it public, and we're just going to make like a index.html file. And then inside of this, I'll just say hello world. Simple, okay? And so the goal is we want to get that index.html put into the S3 bucket. So just to kind of give you a high level overview of what we're doing, we got an S3 bucket we want to spin up. We got CloudFront that we want to put in front of this thing, like this. And technically I should draw the arrow like this. So typically in CloudFront, you can define something called an origin. And this can be pointing to other things. Like you could have the origin be an ECS Fargate instance. You could have it be something else. But the idea is that when a user hits CloudFront, it's going to use the path and try to make a request to find the file that's in the bucket. And if it can't find it, then it probably just returns some generic 404 not found error. So to make sure you guys understand this will be the user, and they are going to hit CloudFront. The domain, when you create a CloudFront distribution, you'll get like some random domain. I say cloudfront.net, I believe is what it's called. But typically, if you have like a domain like mydomain.com, you can create a CNAME record or an A record and point it to CloudFront so that your traffic will actually be served from CloudFront itself. So that's what we're going to try to do. And we're going to put a simple index.html and just see how far we can make this. So now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make one called scripts, I guess. And then I'm going to make one called deploy.sh, and I'll put a bash directive up here and chmod plus x that deploy script. So make sure I do deploy. Okay. And I want to go ahead and like write the Terraform code inside of this, which will run Terraform. And then finally it'll push these files to my bucket. Again, I didn't really plan for this video, so we're just going to go ahead and YOLO it, and using AI is a great way to hit the ground running if you know what you're actually doing. So we want to go ahead and say create an S3 bucket, create a CloudFront distribution, link the S3 bucket as an origin, also set up the AWS provider. Okay, let's just go ahead and let the agent fill in the code because, we're lazy to code now. Let's just let AI do it for us because you're going to be much more productive just letting this stuff do the work for you. Okay, so let's go ahead and collapse this. And it might have bugs, so let's just read through this real quick. So the first thing is you set up that Terraform block and you say, hey, you have to use version 5 or above to have all these like AWS resources, right? And then we're specifying a region. So we want this to live on AWS US East 1. And then we create a bucket. So my Terraform website bucket. You might need to make this more unique. So I'm going to put WDC for Web Dev Coding in front of this thing. And this is where we're going to store the public files. So like technically I could put another one called like about.html, and then we could just go ahead and like let this be some like generic about page, right? So moving on to like the first resource block that we see, basically this is going to spin up an AWS S3 bucket. This is like a keyword that's provided from this AWS provider up here, and there's like a bunch of these things. So like you'd have to kind of go through the list and understand what you'd have access to. Like there's a lot, but basically any type of AWS resource, there's probably some type of thing you can use for it. And this is like your own label that you'd use internally in the domain specific language of Terraform. So you can kind of like link stuff together with their dependency graph. And there's also some properties you can pass to this. So every Terraform resource has properties. I'm going to go ahead and call this bucket whatever this is, but I mean, there's like a bunch of other stuff that's on here. And the goal is we want to create the bucket, and then down here, there should be like a CloudFront distribution. I know there's a lot of random code, but here's the main thing. We're creating the distribution right here, and we are pointing it to the S3 bucket that we defined above. Okay, so this S3 bucket has some outputs, and like you basically just need to get the regional domain here. Okay, now just to kind of go through this stuff, like I don't know if it's truly correct, but basically you have to grant CloudFront permission to even access that bucket. So I think this is what the origin access identity is. If you scroll down, there's another property where we can define the root object. So like this is like the thing that will load when you try to go to this page. Maybe I should just like make some generic stuff there too, okay? Now, here in CloudFront is where you can define cache behavior. So like you can actually override your origins request headers or response headers, and you can specify how long stuff should stay cached in CloudFront so that when a user makes a request in the future, it's going to load that cache file instead of having to go to the S3 bucket and then download that. And that's going to cost you extra money in terms of requests, and it's going to be a little bit slower because now you have to go through CloudFront. CloudFront has to hit the origin, that has to send the data back, CloudFront has to cache it, and the CloudFront has to send it back to your user. So the more you cache static assets, the faster your site will load, especially since this is going to be distributed across the globe. CloudFront is going to be a global CDN, right? Let's see what else you can do here. So restrictions, I guess we're not restricting this. You can actually specify what regions in AWS you want to restrict. So like if you don't want this stuff ever to be propagated to Asia or, I don't know, Europe or something, you can restrict and say, I only want this to live in the United States. So you could say like US1. All right, viewer certificate. Honestly, I don't know what this is, but you could just ask AI if you really care about understanding it. So OAI, this is basically like allowing CloudFront to access the bucket because the bucket is private. I think if I scroll back up, you'll see there's configuration to say, hey, do not allow any public access to the bucket. And so you have to use an OAI type of setup so that it can access the bucket. And then we're basically creating a policy to allow this CloudFront distribution to do a get object request on the bucket to get the files that we're going to store there. All right, let's move on to actually deploying it. So like we have this main.tf file. If I cd into infra and then I do a Terraform init, that should prepare all the Terraform code and bring in the modules I'll need to deploy to AWS. And then when that's done, I should be able to do a Terraform apply like this. And then that should actually prompt me. I guess it's going to prompt me, are you sure you want to create these things? So it's going to try to create a bunch of stuff in my AWS account. And if you are a good engineer, go through here and verify that it's not trying to delete stuff or modify stuff that you wouldn't think it should modify. But we're just going to go ahead and YOLO it and say yes. And then it's going to go through and start creating the S3 bucket. It's going to create the CloudFront distribution. It's going to create these policies that link them all together. And then eventually when this is done, by the way, CloudFront takes a very long time, like up to 10 minutes to actually finish deploying. So if you feel like this is stuck, it's just because it takes a while. The CDN takes a while to like fully set up. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and keep on cooking while this is deploying. So we want to go to scripts. And technically what I could do here is a Terraform init. I could do a Terraform apply. And then I can say auto approve so that I don't have to like say yes. And then finally, we want to copy all the files in public to the S3 bucket. So I think there's a command called AWS S3. I guess there's a copy command. I thought there's another command called sync, but maybe this one works. So basically we're going to say, hey, get every file inside that public directory and recursively like traverse it and copy those files into my WDC, my Terraform website bucket. Looking at this, I mean, like, honestly, you should probably not have this hard coded. You could probably do like a Terraform output and then you can get the bucket name. I won't dive into that. Well, let's hard code it for now. Having hard coded things, like we have the same value hard coded in two different places. You probably shouldn't do that. You should probably use a Terraform output to get the value of this thing so you can copy it in. Or, let's just go ahead and try that. Why not? Let's just go ahead and try it. I'm going to go ahead and add an output over here. So one way you can do this is you say output, I'll say S3 bucket name, and then we will just go ahead and make that be an output, which, by the way, the value is like going to point to the resource. So like this S3 bucket resource, if I go ahead and split this, here's the resource, and those resources have outputs. So like, again, I already mentioned this, but you can get the bucket, and I'm going to output this here. Now what an output does, if you're not really following along at this point, because I've been rambling and kind of confusing, but the bucket name, this is like a custom label that I'm giving this value. And the reason we're doing this is because in deploy.sh, I can actually say bucket name is equal to, and then I can grab that output that we just kind of talked about. Okay, so we're outputting something called S3 bucket name, and we're going to use that over here, grab it, put it in a variable in bash, and then we're going to actually interpolate this. So I think I can actually say something like this, interpolate the bucket name, and then we should be good. Now also the CloudFront distribution name, we should probably get that as well. Because, actually, I don't know if we need the domain. We might need the ID. Domain, we'll say ID. Let me go back and go to the main and go to the bottom. Let's get the ID instead of the domain name. Don't care about the domain name. Why not? We'll output the domain name as well. So we want to get the ID here so that we can use it over here. And then this is basically saying, hey, go in the CloudFront and clear out the cache because we just put new files into it. Okay. So here's a really, quick way to get a folder of static assets deployed out to CloudFront into an S3 bucket as the origin. And yeah, when this is done deploying, we should be able to run our deploy script. It should quickly run through these two steps. And then it should actually move all the files to the new bucket, and then it should invalidate the CloudFront distribution by running AWS CloudFront create invalidation. Now, something that's important to point out, which is probably hidden by my head, over here you can specify the paths of CloudFront of like what you want to invalidate. So like if you had multiple folders here, like let's say you had a folder called about, and inside of that you have more files and static assets, you can specify what paths you want to invalidate. Or just invalidate everything. I think doing this might cost more money and might be a little bit slower, but we're talking like pennies to do an invalidation. Yeah, probably echoing the website domain name might be useful too, so we can actually like test this out. So I'm going to cut this video and come back when it's done deploying. Again, it might take 10 minutes. All right, I went ahead and logged into AWS so we can actually verify this thing is getting deployed out. Go to CloudFront, and then we are going to see that it should be still deploying. Typically, there's like a status on your CloudFront distribution. All right, so this is done running, as you can see here, but if we go over to the bucket is empty. So like, even though we have a distribution, we don't have any files to serve out. All right, we're gonna go ahead and just run that scripts deploy script. And what's it complaining about? Let's see, no configuration. So one thing I forgot about this script is when you run Terraform init and apply, you wanna bean the infra folder. So let's do a push D infra. And then down here, you can do a pop D, and that should basically kind of cd into that directory, run the commands, and then we can kind of get out of that directory, and then we can start running our copy commands, which should be ran at the root. So looking at this, I think this code's good. We can just go ahead and run that deploy script like this, and it's going to hopefully skip over the Terraform stuff really fast since we just did a deployment. You can see here it noticed no changes. But over here, it looks like it failed to upload public index.html to the S3 bucket. No outputs found. Oh, I know why. It's because I need to do the pop D a little bit lower. I need to do it here. And by the way, I like to indent the stuff that's in the push D. Maybe that's not a good convention, but that's kind of like what I like to do. Let's go ahead and run this and see if it'll make a little bit of progress now. Okay, and so now it's going to get the bucket name, and it's going to... Okay, I have a little issue. I think right now in my terminal, I have pager set to like 1. So like I actually have to page through for this thing to finish. And I do have to press Q for it to finish deploying out there. Oh, I deleted something. 1 second. I'm sorry, this tutorial's all over the place, but I know you guys like watching me ramble. And no, my AI is not working. Why is my AI not working? Terraform. There we go. Let's do it again. Let's just run this. Okay, so it's deploying. That finished. Now we have a distribution. Let's check out the bucket and just check out the files. Okay, we got the index file and the about file. So it did copy the files over to the bucket successfully. And then if I go to my CloudFront distribution, here we go. We got an about page and an index page. So you have now successfully, if you're following along, deployed some static files to an S3 bucket. The bucket is completely private. And CloudFront has access to this bucket because you set it as an origin. So if you go to this origins tab, you can see the buckets right here. And there's like more configuration you can set in here, but typically you'd have to set up some OAI. I don't even know what the acronym stands for. Origin Access Identifier. I just know how to do it. And that is going to grant CloudFront access to the bucket. There's a bunch of other stuff that you could probably learn about CloudFront because you can see here there's a lot of tabs. And every tab has like different types of configurations and stuff. But that is the gist. If you need to use hosting on AWS, you are more than likely going to end up using CloudFront. And if you have static assets, you are more than likely going to end up using an S3 bucket. You can actually have this origin point to other things. Like if you have an ECS Fargate instance, you can put CloudFront in front of that Fargate instance. So if you have like Django or Rails or some type of like traditional server-side rendered application, you can cache all of the endpoints of your app in CloudFront just to speed up your application and reduce the strain on your origin servers, which again, it's another layer of protection in a sense. But yeah, now that we're done doing all this, and I hope you guys followed along, and I don't know if there's any like sensitive stuff that probably got exposed in this video. So we're gonna do a Terraform destroy, but we need to be in this infra directory. So actually, I'm gonna go ahead and just make another command called destroy, and then we are going to remove all this stuff like this, and I'll say destroy, auto approve, whatever, and then we're gonna go and say scripts. Oh wait, I can't do that yet. Let's do a scripts. Oh sorry, chmod +x scripts destroy, and then we can run it. And then that should tear down all those resources that we just created, except for the bucket won't be destroyed because you have to have an empty bucket. So I think this will fail. We could probably race it. Like, let's just race to it. I'm gonna go ahead and just like click on these two, click delete. I have to type permanently delete here so I can actually delete that thing. But hopefully it'll get to the bucket second. I think it'll actually like reverse the order of the dependency graph, and it'll go and delete the distribution first, and then it'll dive in and delete the S3 bucket. So I think I did beat it to the race. So we'll see here. I'm gonna let this destroy for a little bit. But while this is cooking, again, we're gonna make a git ignore, because I might actually commit this code. Maybe not. But I do want to kind of comment some stuff out, like a infra/terraform. I don't want this. I don't want some of this stuff. So let's make sure that none of this stuff actually gets sent over in Git. We really just want the main.tf, that's it. Typically the Terraform state, maybe you can commit that as well. Typically when it deals with Terraform state, maybe in the next video, we can have this remotely store the state in an S3 bucket so that we don't have to like worry about it being on our laptop. Because right now the only way to run the Terraform is like you'd have to go and run it from your laptop because you need this tf state file to exist to be able to successfully do this stuff, right? But for another video. By the way, if you guys like this format of video and you want me to continue doing infrastructure as code stuff, DevOps stuff, let me know. There's some people who seem like they enjoy it. Other people probably watch my content for Next.js stuff. But I do think understanding how to get your application deployed somewhere, whether that's AWS, Google Cloud Compute, Azure, if you like Microsoft stuff, there's a benefit to learning this stuff, right? You don't have to become an expert at it, but at least becoming comfortable and confident of like, yeah, I've done it once. I've deployed my stuff out to AWS. I think that's something that would be pretty good to put on your resume or just be able to talk about in an interview, okay? I think a lot of people are intimidated by AWS, but when you start understanding it, it's not too bad. It's just learning a bunch of services and how they're configured and how they all link together. You know, while we're at it, I'm just going to go ahead and commit this code. I have 103 repositories, but what would it hurt to add one more, right? Just let's add one more repository. We're going to call this one Terraform tutorial. Terraform tutorial. I'm going to go ahead and just make it MIT. Yeah, let's just do this. I'm going to commit this code along the way, and let's see how far I can kind of take it. I'm going to copy this code, and then while this is still wasting our time deploying, because that's typically what happens with AWS stuff, is it spends a lot of time destroying and creating. We're going to say git remote add origin, and we're going to paste in that, and then I'm going to say git add all git commit initial Terraform commit git push origin force. Oh, let me do main. There we go. All right, so I pushed all that code up to that repo. You guys can take a peek at it. We're going to try to build upon this because someone left a comment and really seemed interested in like making a more like longer form tutorial. So that's what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to go back to actually helping out the community. This is the whole reason I make videos, to teach you guys stuff. And this is step one, right? All right, this stuff is done destroying. So it tore down all my resources, and it's always good to go back to AWS and just verify. Because if you have this stuff just kind of sitting around, it's going to cost money. All the things in AWS cost money. Some of the stuff is covered by a free tier. Yeah, my bucket's gone now. So we should be good. I think we're good. So the last thing I want to point out is that this domain here, like it's kind of gross, right? You want to actually have a real domain that's in front of your website, your web application. So you'd have to go to your DNS provider and then like create, I think it's either a C name or an A name. Typically A names are for IP addresses, so I think it might be a C name. And the value needs to be this. Okay, you need to have this be the value of the C name. And then for your name, you could do like an @ symbol to have it be the root of your domain. Maybe we'll do it next video, you know, if there's time. But hope you guys enjoyed this nonchalant video, me teaching a little bit of Terraform. Have a good day. Happy coding. And I have a Discord channel that you guys are welcome to join if you want to find a place to hang out or talk to other developers. I do respond to people there once in a while, so maybe you'll see me message you back if you ask me a question. Have a good day. Happy coding.